Hello, and welcome to our second 2023 budget public consultation sessions. Our online budget meetings are being hosted on Facebook, but also YouTube. Joining us today, we have Brock McGregor, Counselor and Budget Chair, Gord Quinton, our CFO and General Manager of Finance, Budget, Information, Technology, and Transformation. And to also help us questions submitted by the public during these live sessions will be members of our executive management team. For those wishing to learn more about the proposed budget, you can watch the opening night of the budget presentation on your TV's Facebook page or visit www.chatham-kent.ca/municipal budget. We'll start off with an opening video by the mayor and our budget chair.
Welcome to the Municipality of Chatham-Kent 2023 Draft Budget Community Consultation Sessions. I'm your budget chair, Brock McGregor. I'm here with Mayor Darren Caniff, and we're going to highlight some of the aspects of the 2023 budget process and look forward to receiving questions from the community.
Prior to administration putting together the budget, council put together a guideline for them to follow. The guideline was inflation, which turns out to be 6.85%, and then a capital levy, which is spending in capital over and above what we spent the prior year. So the total direction the council gave to administration was 8.35%. Next slide, please.
Administration brought back a proposed draft budget with an increase of 6.35%. And we can see that increase broken down into 4 categories, which we'll expand upon. So maintaining existing services is 0.61% of that increase. A provincial funding reduction is 0.51% of that increase. Capital asset management plan is 3.65% of that increase. And business cases recommended council is 1.58% of the increase. Next slide, please.
Yes, the first piece is to maintain existing services. So within that increase, there's fixed and variable inflation, employee contracts contained within the operating budget. So all those additional inflationary costs are built into that number. Contains such items as increase in fuel, utilities, service level agreement contracts, benefits, all those other the expenses that we have. There's inflationary pressure in there that's what that increase covers off.
One of the main sources of municipal funding is through the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, which is funding directed from the province to municipalities. This year, the funding that we're receiving at Chatham-Kent has been reduced by $892,000. So the province is providing $892,000 less to Chatham-Kent, and that has, of course, a budget impact for this budget year. Next slide, please.
One of the big expenses the municipality has is in capital assets. So within there, they proposed a 3.65% tax increase for infrastructure. The 1.5% we talked about earlier, which is an actual increase so that we can invest more into roads and bridges and other infrastructure. The other 2.3% represented in there represents inflation. That 2.3% keeps us even that if we can buy the same amount of goods this year that we did last year. So the 2.31% is all inflation. The inflation rate we've used is 6.85%. But on the infrastructure side, the increases in inflation were anywhere from 10 to 25% on the construction side of things. So that's absolutely huge impact that we have in the municipality. So within that increase, that's what this covers off.
And the last category is business cases recommended to council. So these are items that are a change in service level. Some of them are related to council priorities, and a number of others are related to provincial requirements. A couple of the largest items are operating costs associated with Next Generation 911, which is a provincial mandate, and Riverview Gardens change to 4 hours of care implementation. So these are items that will be debated at council. Some of them are discretionary, some of them are mandated through provincial regulation, and they make up another component of the budget increase. When discussing property taxes, it's helpful to compare to other communities. Through a third-party study called the BMA study, we have a residential comparison of property taxes paid. So this takes a single detached bungalow home and puts the similar home in different communities, all with populations over 100,000. So we can see on this chart, we have communities like ours, Chatham-Kent, Oshawa, Vaughan, Thunder Bay, Kitchener, a number of other communities, and it shows the relative tax burden. So the amount of taxes paid by that exact same home put in different communities. So through this study, we see that Chatham-Kent is at the low end for property tax burden of that single detached bungalow as compared to a number of other communities. So this is something that we pay close attention to stay competitive with other communities, and is one of a number of metrics that we use to measure progress in our community. With that, we're going to move on to the community consultation questions. As we've talked about before, this is a draft budget, so it's just that, a draft. Through community consultation, through discussion and debate, the budget committee, consisting of council, will look at a number of priorities and make alterations to this budget to finalize the budget for the 2023 year. We look forward to feedback from the community. That can be done through this form, also by emailing your councillors, or by providing deputations to the budget committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren and Brock. As Brock mentioned, we'll start off with some questions, and I just want to be sure to remind those that are watching to enter any questions that you have in the comment section, either of Facebook or YouTube. In addition, there were some questions that were sent to us prior to tonight's session, and what we'll do is we'll try to take from both of those lists. So a pre-submitted question is, this one will be for you, Gord, is I started looking through some of the budget information, and I noticed that the 2023 budget is presented in a new format. Just wondering, why did the budget team decide to make that change?
Hi, I'm Gord Quinton, the Chief Financial Officer, and just yes, we made significant changes to the format this year. In the past, it was more an Excel spreadsheet type of data, and but we really didn't have. There was still a ton of details in the budget book in the past, but it wasn't, I would say, in common language and in a readable format for the majority of the public. And we often were jumping around from topic to topic across the organization, and it, I think sometimes it was hard for both council and the public to make sense of where we were going next. So this is separated into four main categories. First, we have our operating and capital area, but then we get into the detailed operating budget by each department, and it has the history, the details that about the financial details about their budget, a description about what that division does, and then when we get into what they're asking for for council to consider, there's a business case for each issue that's a couple pages of describing not just the cost, but what are council strategic directions that we are achieving by doing whatever we're suggesting as an ad, so that council really can tie that into their strategic planning and have be better informed in making their decisions. And also in the capital area, we have much more details on. Currently, we have approximately $62 million in life cycle, or our funding for our asset management plan, and it gives a lot more details on the projects that are being started or completed in the upcoming year, and really give you an idea of all the assets that we're looking after and where your tax dollars are going, and it's just more about open and transparent government.
Thanks, Gord. Looking to have the public provide us with some questions. In the meantime, I'll continue with the pre-submitted questions. So we just heard from Gord and Darren talk about the breakdown of the proposed tax increase of being 6.35%. And just wondering if you could explain, what is that going to cost a person on average?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Slide 17 will help with this as well. Our executive management team, we were faced with a high inflation this year as we were coming out of the pandemic, through supply chain issues and various other prices of oil and other reasons. Inflation did spiral out of control in 2022 and got up to average around 6.8%. And so as we came together looking at our budget, we knew we had to we always do, but just this year in particular, really had to make sure we were finding efficiencies, new revenues, just looking everywhere we can to find savings to help offset this year's tax increase. And as you can see here, well, in total, on average house, it cost this recommended increases would cost an average homeowner $200. But to maintain all our existing services, so this is emergency services, our snowplows, everything across what we do to maintain existing services, that cost is only $19 an average house, or 0.61%, because we were able to find a couple percent of the efficiencies to be able to absorb the inflation increases there. Then yes, there was a reduction in our major provincial funding, our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund of close to $900,000. That has another $16 impact. But after that, we're only at $35. The majority of this year's budget is in two areas. It's maintaining our assets, our roads, bridges, stormwater, all our buildings, all the assets that we own. Inflation hit that area the hardest, and we also council did approve an asset management plan back in June that had this recommendation of 3.65%, basically 1.5% to continue implementing our asset management plan, and the remainder of that's the inflation portion. And the last area is our business cases that the executive management team is recommending to council in following council's strategic directions. These are suggestions for council to consider, and that was an additional $50. So, just to be clear, $115 of that $200 is just for our assets. So, like, way over half is just to maintain what you see when you look at the road in front of your house.
Thanks, Gord. So just to kind of drill down a little bit. So when you're talking about the asset management plan and the additional 115, I think we've all been experiencing increases in our utilities and insurance and groceries because of inflation. That, you're basically saying the municipality is not immune, and the same thing would go for them, that the purchasing power doesn't go as far, and it's costing more for labor and raw materials to be able to maintain our roads and bridges.
Exactly, and the purchasing power was really depleted last year, like much more than just a 6.8% inflation increase in some of the construction materials, and everyone sort of faced this if they were doing a renovation at their house or went to the lumber yard. Much of the prices of what we buy as a municipality went up sometimes 10, 20, 25%. Which means you're doing 25% less with that same amount of money that you had before. Now, hopefully, some of those prices have gone back down. Lumber, for example, now has returned almost to where it was before, but it's still a challenge for municipality, and some of those prices didn't come back down to earth yet. And so we are really seeing erosion of what we can do without having at least some tax increase for infrastructure to offset that.
Thanks, Gord. I'm going to bring Bruce back into the line with us. He's General Manager of Community Development, and we had a pre-submitted question here. And the question is, it's getting difficult to rent an apartment in Chatham. Is there any more apartment buildings to be built? And then there was a secondary question. We have an agreement with Hydro One, who contributes the funding to our community. How are we going to use that funding?
Thanks, Amy. I'll start with the apartment question first. So over the past year, we've had several apartments finish construction and are now what we call have retained occupancy and are now renting units. That being the 280 unit facility on Park Avenue West called Park Place in Chatham. The apartment building, which is in what we refer to as the Sugar Beet subdivision, is now renting apartments just off of Merritt. The downtown facility is now got full occupancy, and then there's also the conversion of the old St. Joe's school building on Raleigh Street, which is now fully complete as well. All those have came online in the past year. Currently, we do have 5 different apartments that are under construction in Chatham. There's the 2 apartments on Riverview Drive, just west of Merritt as well. We have one that's just starting under construction on Grand Ave East, and then the Dolson Ave facility, and then there's also municipal build that's happening on McNaughton, just west of St. Clair Street right now as well. So there's a number under construction, and there's certainly a couple more that are what we call in the planning stage. Another one on Kyle Drive South, and then there's another one on Grand Ave East. Certainly, there's others in other communities too that are planned and probably will start construction soon. We have 3 different apartment projects in Tilbury. There's one in Blenheim. There's another one in Walsburg that's in the planning stage. And then also there's another potential municipal build on West Court as well in Walsburg that we just actually put out a Let's Talk page for further consultation on. So that's kind of a quick summary of all the different apartment projects that are currently underway. The second question is a little bit different. Yeah. So with regard to Hydro One, so back in September, Council entered into what we call a community support agreement with Hydro One with regard to the various transmission facilities. There's a number of community benefits in that agreement. The one big one being an annual payment of $1 million a year over the next 10 years. In accordance with the agreement, the funds are to be allocated for what they're defined as recreational and cultural purposes. So another subsequent report went to council in October, which established a council ward funding program out of that funding program. So how that works is each ward councillor would have up to $25,000 annually, and the mayor would have $125,000 annually to apply to projects in their specific wards that meet that criteria. And then there's another $450,000 that could be applied to any single project at council's direction. So in short, the funding, while it can't be used on other specific things like necessarily roads or bridges or reducing the tax rate specifically, because it is one-time funding, certainly those dollars go a long way to funding projects that would otherwise have to be funded through the tax base over the next 10 years or so.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm going to bring Gord in. So you were just mentioning about a bunch of new apartment builds, and I think we've all seen that as well as additional houses. And so a pre-submitted question someone had, and I think, Gord, you might be the best one to talk about it. I know that people sometimes maybe don't completely understand about how there's assessment growth, and if my value of my property doubles, does that mean my taxes and that will double as well? So one of the pre-submitted questions was, I see hundreds of new houses and apartment buildings being built. Why do you need more money if they're all paying taxes?
Thanks. That's a great question. I think slide 28, if you could put that up, I'll talk to that a little bit. That's showing that we did have a great year in 2022, which is feeding into our 2023 column for assessment growth. So yes, one of the best years in our history of the number of housing starts we had in the last 18 months. So, uh, um, so what we do with the assessment growth, council did approve an assessment growth policy in their last term, where a portion of that assessment growth does go into lowering taxes, and in fact 0.8%, but with the rest, we also want to look at what are the impacts of that growth. So the easiest example is as you open up a few more kilometers of roads, you of course have to add, there's a little bit more maintenance, there's a little bit more salting, a little bit more plowing, snow and maintenance, right? So so some of that has gone to there as well, and we have and as our population rebounded, there's stresses on our ambulance service, where so some funding has gone to, in conjunction with last year's budget, into funding that as well. Your question about how houses, what happens with, a lot of house values have gone up 50%, 100%, sometimes 200% over the last few years. But it's key to remember that our taxation is still based on January 1st, 2016 housing values. So none of those changes that are happened in the last few years make any difference. And in fact, the assessment growth rising, when we do get MPAC doing their next assessment, that will be effective for either 2014 or 2015. 2024 or 2025. Sorry. It all depends on how you compare to the average house. So the municipality, the changes in assessment are revenue neutral. It's about how we're dividing up the budget pie. So if everybody's values doubled, there actually is no change at all in your houses, in your taxes. It's really how your house has gone up in comparison to others around you, and for every person that might be paying more taxes because their house went up more than the average, there's someone else that will be paying less because their house value went up less than the average, or farm or commercial or industrial property. So all that goes into the mix, and we multiply that assessment value times the tax rate to get your taxes. But assessment changes in reassessment, just as the key issue is that is revenue neutral to the municipality and the budget process.
Thanks, Gord. Another question for you. Howard submitted on Facebook just now, and his question is, will farm tax rates continue to be provided with a discount rate of 22% of residential rates? This was supposed to have been a temporary reduction due to low commodity prices in 2004, but councils have continued to provide this discount in spite of commodity prices being at record highs. Will council be voting on bringing the farm rate back to the 25% level?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Howard. Yes. By legislation, the rate that we charge farm properties can at a maximum be 25% of the residential rate. But you're correct. Between 2004 to 2006, I believe, is when there was multiple reductions by the council of the day to get that down to 22%. And it was because of low commodity prices and a sort of a generational change in assessment methodology by MPAC, where there was just huge increases in assessment value. Those changes are now, well, they're supposed to be updated every 4 years, all assessment values. I know it's been a little bit longer with the pandemic, but so they're more accurate, so and commodity prices that have rebounded. I know prices of inputs have also gone up recently as well, but overall farm incomes overall are rising in Chatham-Kent. That's the data in Stats Canada through the census, and so so one other topic, I just want to make a distinction. Right now, we're talking about budget at council, how much the municipality needs to do its business. The decision on who pays through which is our tax policy decisions, is actually not made till around one of the April council meetings, after we get more details from the province on education taxes, and we can after the budget's approved, we could do those calculations and give a recommendation to council. One of the keys is what does our assessment values look like in the future, and we may not know that in time for the 2023 tax year.
Thanks, Gord. I'm going to have April Rydick join us, General Manager of Community Human Services. A few questions were submitted ahead that fall into her area. So April, if you can bear with me, I'll probably ask you a few questions altogether. But this first one is, can we increase the affordable housing level in our communities so that the homeless issue can be addressed?
Thanks, Madam Moderator, for this question. Thanks to whoever submitted it. Certainly, homelessness within our community is a community problem. And we have seen the number of individuals who are experiencing being homeless increase dramatically as a result of the pandemic. Chatham-Kent is not alone in this. We have seen this right across the province, frankly, right across Canada as well. And the only answer to kind of moving forward with really trying to deal with homelessness is more housing. Now, it's not just affordable housing. So there is a housing continuum, starting with emergency housing, which things like the shelter that we are operating right now. There is transitional housing, where we work with individuals almost in a trial basis, where they learn how to be good tenants, and then we work with them to get moved into some more permanent rental space after they've had time to experience being a tenant for a period of time. We then have supportive housing, which is what Indwell is trying to do within our community. And they have purchased St. Agnes School and have a budget ask into council in order to build some supportive housing. The difference with supportive housing is that along with your actual kind of housing component, there are a number of wraparound services that become available on site, whether that's healthcare, whether that is mental health services, whether it's employment services, and we could go on and on in terms of what those are. So then we move into affordable housing, and even affordable housing varies between housing that's deeply affordable compared to housing that is at about 80% of the market rental rate. So We are working on it. We're trying to work with community partners, some of our private nonprofit groups that work in affordable housing. We do have some builds that are currently being built, and we have some builds in the works that hopefully we will see kind of some success in getting those built. But it will be, the pandemic's been hard. It will take some period of time for us to catch up and have enough affordable housing in our community to make sure that all of our individuals are housed. So thanks, Amy.
Thanks, April. Another question that I know you'll be able to help me with. So this person had started to review the new budget booklet, and their question here, and for those who are maybe wondering where this budget booklet in detail is located, it is at www.chatham-kent.ca/municipal budgets. Their question is, there seems to be a large increase in FTE, and an FTE would be full-time employee in senior services. Can you provide some detail as to why there is that increase?
Sure, that's a great question. And at some point, we might want to bring Gord back in so that he can show the actual FTEs. But of the FTEs that are in the 2023 budget, just under 22, I think it's 21.97 FTEs are for RVG. So Riverview Gardens, our 320-bed long-term care facility. The Ministry of Health has mandated for all long-term care homes to reach a minimum of 4 hours of care by the end of March of 2025. So there is a plan in place over the next several years to provide funding. It's provincial funding that we receive to hire additional staff to staff up long-term care homes to provide an appropriate level of care for our residents. So for this period, we had a number of staff hired in 2022. So for 2023, for this year, our funding allotment allows us to hire 22 additional FTEs to really assist with providing more direct nursing care to our residents. So, and there's that FTE list. So you can see, and I don't know, Gord, if you want to comment any more about that, but just on that list there, kind of half of them are for RVG.
Thanks, April. I just wanted to add, we often get asked about our staffing levels, and this is the list of the base budget staff requests across the entire organization, including our emergency services as well. And yes, there's 41.52 full-time equivalents is what an FTE is. But as April just was suggesting, the majority of those are at Riverview Gardens. But there's funding also coming for most of those jobs. The one that's highlighted in green is also a mandated must-do position at Riverview Gardens, and that is the only job on this list that needs new tax funding this year. The rest of the jobs that you see on this list is where either efficiencies have been found to support this position request, or there's been a revenue or a user fee offset to it, or there's provincial funding to it. So only one job that's tax funded, and that's I guess a really important part of this budget, and how much work the executive management team did in making sure that only the must-do things were in this budget, and that we've really gone through in details everything that we're suggesting here.
Thanks, Gord. While I still have April, another question that that you'll be able to assist us with. So a pre-submitted question was, how will the municipality support the arts, including proper staffing for art space and the Ridge House Museum?
Thanks, Amy, and to whoever submitted that question. So certainly there's a few pieces in there. In 2022, it was December actually, Council approved our public art policy. And so we are in arts and culture very, very excited about that. And throughout 2023, we will look at implementing that policy and bringing public art to Chatham-Kent, which is really new for us and very, very exciting as we move forward through this year. With respect to, I'll tackle art space first. So part of what we have done with arts and culture within our team through the past year, we really tried to strive to find efficiencies. We really looked at being focused on how to better allocate staff and how to stay within our budget at doing that. So through this review, I commend Heather Slater, our manager of arts and culture, for the work that she has done with help from our finance and budget team. We have found a vacancy and within our allotted FTEs, and we will be posting shortly for a part-time, it's about 20 hours a week, staffing for a gallery attendant for art space. So that should help in terms of providing a bit more consistent staffing and consistent hours for our citizens to enjoy art space and our artists to have somewhere to display their work. As for Ridge House, we actually do have staffing for Ridge House. And we are certainly balancing our open hours with the demand for that facility. The team will constantly monitor it. Remember, Ridge House was closed throughout most of the pandemic. So we'll continue to monitor this coming season. We're only open in the summer season and see whether or not the demand requires an increase in staffing. But right now we're pretty confident that we are good with staffing for Ridge House for this coming year. Thanks.
Thanks, April. I'm going to bring Gord back on. Another pre-submitted question. Again, just a reminder to those that are watching, if you have a question, please enter it into the comment section and we will ask our executive management team. Gord, this pre-submitted question was, my taxes for this area seem kind of high. How do they compare to others in the province?
Yes, thanks for the question. So good timing, as council just received the BMA study on Monday, and if the BMA study does a whole bunch of comparisons on, there's actually over 500 pages of comparisons in that document. It goes down in detail by specific services, so you can look up at how our fire department expenses compare to other fire departments or road departments, whatever you want to look at in that BMA study. But what's on the screen here is the summary of an average in Chatham-Kent on the mathematical average of a house that's valued, like I say, at a January 1st, 2016 value of around 173,000, pays $3,250 of taxes. And of our comparators of populations greater than 100,000 across the province, we're actually the lowest. So that's, this is for a detached bungalow home. So think about two 3-bedroom home, single car garage, just a nice average house. And we're at the very lowest of our comparators across the province. And remember, like, yes, there's differences town to town, but you still have to do there's still the sidewalk, the road, the arena down the street, the library, the our public health, all the services that are provided by a municipality are relatively the same across Ontario and have a relatively the same cost. We have one glaring exception to that in Chatham-Kent, is that we do have 2,500 square kilometers of area. We have our assets spread out. Some assets are underused, but it's because they may be in a smaller area, population area, but still within that 15-minute drive to that arena or library or whatever it is. So in spite of that, we have the lowest taxes here in our comparators. And one other, so we talked about the BMA study, but another study that was presented to council last year, but it's available on our website, is we commissioned, council commissioned KPMG to do a core services based budget review. And its conclusion was the same, that we are with the geography that we face, and when I say geography, I also mean all the drainage systems in Chatham-Kent. We have over 20% of the municipal drains, which means there's on every road there's a few bridges on, right, especially in parts of our municipality. So even faced with all that, we're a low-cost municipality. I do want to clearly say we're also a slightly lower than average household income municipality as well. Some of the places that you see on the right hand of this chart that have higher taxes also have very high household incomes as well. If you talk about Oakville or Vaughan or things like that, but even when you look at taxes based on the average income of Chatham-Kent, we're still in the average to below average range. Just want to, I know I'm repeating myself, but I just want to clear, we do not have high taxes in Chatham-Kent. I know nobody likes to pay taxes. Everyone wishes it was lower. But as you do the comparisons, we are on the lower end, at least below average. Thanks.
Thanks, Gord. I do want to kind of touch base a little bit more on asset management plan, because the rate of impact is just over 3.5%. So the majority of the effect on the proposed budget increase. But you were talking about our our geographic area being 2,500 square kilometers. And I'm wondering, our population density also needs to be taken into account, and I wonder if that's a fair statement. So, when people try to compare the taxes of Chatham-Kent, say, to Windsor, Windsor has a much larger population compared to Chatham-Kent, which is at around 104,000. So, is it fair to say that when we have all these expenses for 2,500 square kilometers that have to be distributed amongst the number of people, it's really not a fair comparison with those areas that have a much smaller land mass and a higher population density? Would that be a fair comment?
Yes, it's like you say, it's about how many households are there to pay the bills, and as you get more spread out, as we are in Chatham-Kent, as a single tier, providing all the services that we provide as a single tier municipality, there's only so many taxpayers to spread that out. And so also in the BMA study was a chart on population density, and where we have 44 citizens per square kilometer of our space. Windsor has 1,660 people for that same square kilometer. Now, I get that we have vast amounts of farmland, and of course that we would have less of a population density than a city, but it's still, but just the kilometers of roads that we have compared to in Windsor is way more as well, and and like I said about the drainage systems and the number of bridges that we have, I think there's over 850 large bridges in Chatham-Kent and around 28,000 culverts. It's those stats that there's just a lot of expenses to have with a lower population to pay for it, and that's why the previous council adopted our growth strategy. We need to increase the population, have more houses, more commercial industrial businesses come to town. Our employment levels our unemployment levels are really low right now, and we want to keep it that way and keep on bringing new jobs to Chatham-Kent and continue attracting new residents to help share on these. A lot of these costs are I would say like base costs that if you have an arena in a town, if you can attract another Ridgetown Arena, for example, if you can attract another 50 households to Ridgetown that use that arena, it's the same cost of running it, but just lowers the cost for everyone by having those attraction efforts.
Thanks, Gord. So when looking at, I'll actually bring up the slide again that showed the breakdown. So when you show the asset management plan and the request of 3.65%, so of the potential average $200 increase, the $115 per asset, does that mean that all our assets that the municipality has to maintain are going to be fully funded, or are there going to be still? I believe what this person was asking was, it seemed like in previous years we were not fully being able to cover all our assets. So are we going to be with this increase caught up, or are we still going to be looking for a deficit for our assets?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in June of 2022, there was an update to our asset management plan, and this was required across the province. All municipalities had to update their asset management plans. And what that plan stated, and it was adopted by council, is that we really need about $124 million annually to properly maintain all the assets that we own across Chatham-Kent, to do the fixes when they should be done. As you know, if you think of your own house, if you have a leak in your roof, it may be pretty cheap to hire someone right away and get it patched. But if you don't do that and you let that leak continue, well, pretty soon you've ruined the drywall, you've ruined the flooring on the second floor. The costs just keep going up and up and up on maintaining your house, and it's the same with a road and or any of our assets that we have. We need to do the right repairs at the right time. And that's what that $124 million of recommended funding would do. We currently only have $64 million, or 50% of that, in the 2022 budget. We are trying. Council, the previous council adopted the report recommending to this council in this budget to try to close the gap by having that 1.5% tax equivalent for the asset management plan, and to fund the purchasing power loss through inflation. We realize that $115 of the $200, way over 50% of I believe 58% of this is an infrastructure budget, infrastructure and the inflation on infrastructure, and I guess one other thing I would add, that this council will be really engaged in 2023 later in the year and in 2024 and bringing the province has legislated new standards to be in place by July 1st, 2024, and another set by July 1st, 2025. So it's one of the asks in the budgets to have the funding to do the work that's required. it also will the public will have a lot more input on where they want to see their assets, um, um, how happy or how, if you think of a road system, um, how, how okay are people with broken up roads that aren't being repaired because we don't have the funding to do it, and the public, and then through council will be making those decisions that will drive our 2025 and onward asset management plan.
Thanks, Gord. We've had a couple questions be posted on Facebook. So the first one is Oliver, and that question is, our development plan, transportation master plan, etc., heavily emphasize active transportation as a solution to growth, community health, and culture. Why does the budget seem to not have any funds allocated to furthering these initiatives? For example, permanent staff who would then be dedicated to carry out this work.
Thanks, and I'm not sure if anyone else on EMP wants to join in, but overall, there are projects in the budget that do have active transportation part of it. So um, um, whether it's when there are some roads that are being rebuilt that when they're being rebuilt are getting bike lanes as part of that rebuild. And in our asset management plan in general is some base money available for trails and those types of initiatives, and part of the ask of additional funds for our asset management plan, a portion of that will go to those to active transportation infrastructure as well. I don't believe there's any huge capital projects that are specific about that in this budget, but in 2022, and I know there's funds already set aside where we are continuing to finish, for example, the Queso rail line trail that went from Highgate close to Chatham, below the 401 there, and on its way to Tilbury there. So more work is being done on the active transportation infrastructure. And it's basically sometimes our life cycle funds are the funding isn't great enough. So sometimes it's about putting money aside in reserves, and then perhaps every 2 or 3 years we can actually accomplish a major trail extension or a larger project.
Thanks, Gord. I'm going to bring Edward, our General Manager for Infrastructure and Engineering, in with us. Janet on Facebook posed a question. Are there plans to implement more EV, electronic vehicle charging stations in Chatham-Kent?
Thank you for the question. I believe we have about 7 charging stations across the municipality, and we're monitoring their use, and we'll be coming back to council in the future with recommendations to potentially expand those locations. But at present time, we don't have any funds in the budget to expand them.
Thanks, Edward. I'm going to bring Gord back in. So Gord, we're nearing the end of our time allotment here, and there's one thing that I know people often will ask is, so of the taxes they pay, where do they go? And so I thought it might be a great opportunity to show an example of what is in the tax insert. So when you receive your tax bill, that we have this breakdown. Is there some information that you want to share with us?
Yeah, this is there in the final tax bill that you received late June, early July. We do put this tax insert for the residents to be able to take a closer look at. But this is just a breakdown of that $3,250 of an average house, where the funding goes. It's your money that you're entrusting with the municipality to provide those municipal services, and we just want to be open and transparent of exactly where that money is going, and many of the things that we do are just very expensive things to do. You might the largest amount is going to infrastructure and engineering services, but that's because of our vast road network and the cost of rebuilding roads and bridges and all those costs. I won't go through everything on here, but emergency services in total also take up a large chunk, and then there's there's just the rest of running a municipality in all the other areas there. So it's good to see. I think it's just a good thing for people to look at to know where their tax dollars go. All the slides that you've seen tonight are in our what were included in our opening night presentation. So going to to the municipal website and searching for the 2023 budget, you'll be able to get these documents and perhaps take a closer look at the details.
Thanks, Gord. So just maybe to provide a bit of a summary, so the proposed tax impact for this year, 6.35%. So that is the starting. The average household impact, around $200. And for those listening tonight, additional questions were asked yesterday. So we encourage you to watch Facebook Live from yesterday's to see a sampling of other questions that those in the community had asked. So I also just want to provide a little bit of information about the Budget Committee deliberations. They'll be starting on January 25th, 26th, and 31st from 6 to 10 p.m. If more time is required, February 1st and 2nd has also been set aside if needed. There is an opportunity to submit a written deputation with the Budget Committee by emailing Budget and Performance Services at ckfps@chatham-kent.ca before 3 p.m. on January 25th. And I want to again thank everyone for joining us, and I'm going to bring back Councillor and our Budget Chair, Brock McGregor, for any final comments.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who was online this evening and yesterday providing questions and submitting questions in advance. It's really important to note that this is a draft budget, so there's lots of work left for the Budget Committee to do in the coming week, and maybe a little more than week. And it's really important to have feedback from the community to understand what's important as we make those decisions to set up the budget for the next year. Also want to thank all staff that was available tonight to answer questions. And just a reminder, there is still an opportunity to provide feedback. You can do that through the deputations, as Amy's mentioned. You can also just pick up the phone and call your counselors or send emails, and we definitely appreciate that feedback. Those budget meetings are open to the community, so you can attend in person, you can watch online, and we really appreciate everyone's contributions to this process. Thank you.